2, 1, 8:40. We're very particular today. We are doing a very... timings, we got TV timings today, haven't we?
We have.
Mark wanted to do 8:40.
Well, because we're so time poor, we need to really grab at those 5 minutes. So here's your extra 5 minutes of us talking about giving you extra 5 minutes or finding 5 minutes. Are you making a cup of tea? Because you've turned on the loudest kettle in the world. Want to go make a cup of tea?
Why don't you make me a cup of tea?
Because I've sat here setting it all up. Go make a cup of tea.
All right, bye.
Good morning, everyone. How are we all? Julie Hart, Sarah Fox, morning. Love the Southwold vlog. There's a second one coming, obviously, part 2. Ellery Jones, The Pups Don't Lie, Fiona Reed, Sean Tucker, Tori, if you're here, Nadia is going to do a full dance, whistle, and all sorts of other things, aren't you, Nads, for a dad, Ken. Fiona Cloder, Snotface, Lazybones, Egan Reed. Wow, that's such an elaborate name, Fiona. Sarah Begley, April Hill, Mary Thomas, Mo Power, Yana Denchfield. First time here. Welcome. First time here. In a minute, Nadia will be here too. Elliot Gonzalez. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Anna Charalumbus. So here we are, and we've got a curious range of things to talk about. We've got Love Island gaslighting. Is it gaslighting? We're talking about intimacy coordinators after an interview with Ian McKellen. The Alec Baldwin trial is back in the news. And Sam Smith has been a little devil. Or so they say if you're Ted Cruz in Florida.
Parts of America, wow.
But also, obviously, one of the initial things that we want to just pay reference to, how can we not, is the tragic news in Turkey of this earthquake, which weirdly puts me in mind of, there was an awful an earthquake in 1999. I don't know if you remember, I was working for National Geographic. Do you remember Jake, my cameraman friend that you knew? He had to go into, he was one of the first cameramen there.
Was he?
He went in with the rescue dogs, I think the same team that have gone in here. Yeah. And when he came back, he had to have all sorts of therapy because of what he came across and what he saw.
Unimaginable.
But of
Syria,
course, yeah.
It's like, they've not been through enough. It's just unimaginable, isn't it? Absolutely unimaginable. And I mean that literally. Like, if you think about it, if you came home and there was just something just a bit off key with your house, I don't know, somebody's knocked into your front wall and knocked it down, just looking at this deficit, and how horrific that feels. This is like 1 billion times over, isn't it? And just the hopelessness. I mean, you know, when talking to children about these things, it's, as always, you know, it's the good thing to focus on is how the world pulls together, how the teams from across the world. I mean, I think, like you said, they've asked particularly from us for these dog searching
I mean, I think they've reached out to so many guys.
Yeah.
I mean, the death toll is officially 4,000. If it's anything like the one in 9, I think it could reach up to 20 or 30 now. I mean, it's a massive... The weird thing about numbers, when they sort of report numbers, I keep seeing the sort of news stories, and what happens is it's the same headline with a higher number, and then it becomes sort of something curiously sort of like grisly and sort of voyeuristic, doesn't it, in the news flow.
And then it's just all the aftermath of, like, where will they go?
It's so cold there as well.
Where are they getting shelter? Yeah.
And
anyone with families out there, my God.
Years ago, the only experience we've ever had was in California one time. There were a couple of tremors. They weren't earthquakes. But the
God, it was scary.
The entire thing moved. Yeah. I mean, so you can't you know, my heart just goes out to the kids and well, everyone, but, you know, just imagine the disorientation, fear, and when it's something as primal as the earth, this is nothing you can do anything about. You can't you can't say be careful today in case an earthquake happens. It's
no, out nowhere.
Anyway, yeah, all our thoughts are there, and obviously lots of the news is looking at that. If we were around the water cooler, what would we be talking about today? Probably Love Island, I think.
Don't panic, because if you haven't watched Love Island, you will not be excluded from this conversation.
Now, this is curious because we watched it, and every year I seem to have heard that there's stories about the potential for gaslighting or men gaslighting or boys gaslighting on the show.
We've had a few years where women have been as well.
Oh, right. So,
I mean, I'm always really, really wary of pulling out people from reality shows I have a bit of a joke here and there on my lives on Instagram, but I'm really wary of pulling people out and then like attacking them, because there are ramifications often for those people down the line. And I think we must never forget these are young people messing up. And yes, they have put themselves in the firing line by going into a show like this. But honest to God, having done reality shows of a kind myself, and having been in this business and my family been in this business for decades, nothing actually prepares you for 24-hour cameras. And the pressure, and the other thing about being in any kind of reality show is that anything that normally in life you might just pass by is magnified a million times. Yesterday, one of the girls said, "Do you think we could be overthinking it?" It was Tanya, when she was talking to Liv, who was worrying about something. And I wanted to go, yes. Usually you are in a reality show. So parking all of that, gaslighting. What does gaslighting mean? Gaslighting means, I think, in its purest form, gaslighting to me means manipulating.
Yeah, I mean, it's trying to suggest to someone that what their interpretation of something is wrong or is the opposite, and the person doing it basically gains from this.
And where the terminology comes from is a movie, isn't it? Back in the
play,
20s.
yeah,
It was. I saw the movies where a husband is trying to drive his wife mad. So he keeps turning the lights, the gas up and down. So she thinks and he literally drives her crazy. So gaslighting is manipulation a bit more, because you're trying to make the person question their own sanity and their own
and their own interpretation. So it's like you'll drop a bomb of some kind of behavior, and then when they respond to it in a certain way, you pretend it hasn't happened or it wasn't like that. It's a classic. I mean, I
do think it's really good that we have awareness around these things now. But I do think sometimes it's just young people trying to work out how to get what they want, which has happened since the beginning of time, when boys and girls are trying to get boys and girls to fancy them, to have sex with them, to go out with them. And so, I think we're in danger of always using it, when sometimes it's just the normal growing up and trying to...
Well, I mean, I often say, I think one of the problems with this show, and again, this is a discussion, you don't have to watch the show to discuss this. One of the problems this show throws up, which makes it really hard for gaslighting almost to not happen, is that we keep forgetting it's a competition as well. So they are all trying to compete, they're all trying to survive, they're all trying to stay in some kind of couple. So it becomes a really difficult thing to put a piece of paper through, because on the one hand, one of the characters in there, Ron, you could say, right, he's being very manipulative, and he's being this, and he's jumping from woman to woman to woman. He's kind of being a bit dense around the emotional sort of significances, but he's also trying to win. Yeah. And he's, and within that, there's, in any game where people are involved, there's manipulation. So I think it becomes tricky. But what I like about, or find funny about this story in The Sun, is there haven't been complaints, but here's the headline: Love Island hit with threats of Ofcom complaints. So this is people saying, I might complain to Ofcom about this due to triggering comments he made.
So good to really dig in, to see these headlines, and really dig into them and see, what are you trying to make me feel? What are you forcing me to feel?
Well, all you do if you pass your eyes over that quickly is Ofcom complaints, and you associate it with Ron and Lana. Now, the thing about this is, and it's something else that, again, you don't need to know the details of this. I think the other issue with the programme is not only is it a competition, so there's that sort of grey area, but these are young people finding their feet in relationships.
Horny as hell.
Yeah.
But we've said that people quite often are quite shocked that we've watched this over the years with our daughters. But what I would say is it is a brilliant learning curve, because we discuss all this stuff with our kids. We're like, what did you think of... What did you think about that one? And what did you think about that one? And at the moment, the one that I am so glad our daughters and your daughters and daughters and everybody's sons and sons and sons is witnessing is Shaq. Because to me, he is the model. Like, if our girls brought someone home like that, be over the moon.
You know what I'd say if you walked through the door?
What?
It's a love shack and a little old place there.
And again, you don't have to have watched it, but this boy stands up for the girls. He, with articulacy and eloquence and grace, pulls the boys up. He is so deep, that boy. He also has fallen madly in love with this young girl, and he has no fear whatsoever of saying it, but not in a needy, not in a controlling way, in a totally confident way that this is how I feel. But we also see a little bit of vulnerability, that he's scared of these big feelings. It's the most beautiful thing to watch. It's what we're always talking about on here. It's like, how do we help fix? You know, when we were talking about the Emily Attack documentary, how do men help fix what's going on in the world? Well, if you want a perfect example of it, watch Love Island, watch Shaq. If you're having trouble with your sons, or if your daughters keep choosing bad boys, go back, watch Love Island from about 4 weeks ago, and just fast forward to the Shaq bits, because as far as I'm concerned, he's fabulous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And MeTube
And
makes a valid point. MeTube says, but it's also a brand and a generator of major revenue. Absolutely.
Exactly. But I don't have issue with that.
No.
Because also all those, the landscape has changed. Like in the days when if I'd wanted to be a presenter from when I was very young, I didn't. I started out as an actress. But if I had, there would have been a route I would have had to have taken. And it's just different now. This is our television. YouTube is our television. You know, people say to me, oh, do you miss any other kind of presenting? I say, I present every day.
Content creation has changed.
On my own channel. You know, we get to do things in our own way. Now, Love Island has become a pathway into being a presenter or an influencer or, you know, whatever. And it's just the way that it is. So it is a two-way street. Those kids do want it and like it. But I just think as a society, it's up to us to not, and newspapers, not to give them a kicking.
Yeah. I agree. I also just think, again, it's just interesting that, yes, there was an aspect. I mean, like last night, there was a moment where I was watching it with the girls and I was like, oh, look, that's a little bit of gaslighting going on there. But it's that weird thing of, and we've talked about it on in fact, we've got a How to Stay Married going out tonight where we talk about it, where it's a really tricky one because in all relationships, in the start of all relationships, there's something, let's not use gaslighting, but there's low-level manipulation, let's say. You're trying to make someone find you attractive. You're going to say stuff that kind of nudges them towards looking at you in a slightly more favourable way. If you really drill into the kind of strict linguistic, psychoanalytical definition of that, you could say almost everything about flirting, charming. Charming is another word. You know, the word charm has become really weaponised.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, to charm someone is about...
It's nice to be charming.
The word charm is about creating a spell. You know, you're trying to kind of, and a spell is artificial. So I think it's really important.
There's a real difference there between a charmer and someone who has charm.
But then there's charm syndrome.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah. I just think it's really, really complicated. Now, of course, this is a show and of course it's highlighted, of course. But, you know, we talk to our girls and this is a lot of what goes on in real life. You know, we are watching them work out stuff. We are watching behaviour that I'm afraid is quite normal as well. It's not the right way to be, but I think a lot of them are do you know what I think is brilliant is that they've taken alcohol out of it. I think they get 1 or 2 glasses of wine and that's really important. I think in the early days they could booze up.
And just a final point on this, I think so rarely do you actually get from real life presentations of them. I think Shaq is a really important, whatever happens to his relationship, however it goes, he's demonstrated some really positive masculinity, which I don't actually think you get to see often in the real world. You obviously get it in dramas and stuff like that, but you don't see it often. And we don't assume it's there often. I don't, also being father to daughters amongst young men. So
I'd love to do an interview with his parents. I really would.
Yeah, Christos, that's true. Look, it will be an interesting case to study to get the participants to watch back themselves in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
And then ask them to give feedback on their attitudes.
Yeah,
that's a spin-off
that's
series, Christos. That's a good idea.
Because we all fuck up at that age. We've got to remember the
God,
kids.
what a mess. Yeah.
The kids. I mean, if I'd had to... Oh, my God. I mean, I say to our girls all the time, I had a conversation with one of them yesterday saying, you know what? We are in awe of you. You know, yes, it feels like you're fucking up. Yes, it feels like... But Daddy and I didn't even have a clue what we were doing. It was just all instinct and impulse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Chin-chin.
There was no thought behind anything. So, yeah. Young people, yeah.
I'm drinking Barocca, for those of you asking. Okay, next story is Sir Ian McKellen. I like Sir Ian McKellen.
I love him.
You will not pass. You know, he plays Gandalf.
Him.
Yeah, he was.
Lee went to see him in the
Mother
panto.
Goose.
He said it was he was brilliant in it.
He's a cracking
actor.
and
he's such a funny guy, and I think he's a real actor's actor, isn't he?
Oh, totally. Ian McKellen was in Interview. He was chatting with, I don't know who he was chatting with someone. Simon Armitage. Oh, he was chatting on Radio 4, that's right, with the Poet Laureate. And he threw up the idea, which is not a new idea. Yeah, he posited the idea.
I hate that word.
That's what owls do.
That's not your promontory. You keep using these ick words. I don't like
Did you
them.
see the? Did you see
Yes.
After what I was talking about yesterday?
No.
Remember, I sat at the table last night. Dina was here, and I was going, "Why is the word men in so many words pertaining to women? Menstruation, menopause, women, all that kind of stuff." Look at what your mum sent.
My mum is so on things.
Bang on! It was like she was in the room listening to us, and then read it out because it was a great one. I think you should post it.
Where is it? On WhatsApp?
WhatsApp, yeah, on the
group one?
Yeah, the group one. Check it out and read it out.
Woman has man in it, Mrs. has Mr. in it, female has male in it, she has he in it, Madam has Adam in it. Ever noticed how all women's problems start with men? Mental illness, menstrual cramps, mental breakdown, menopause, gynecologist.
Gynecologist.
And when we have real trouble, it's a hysterectomy. But just remember, when we can't take it anymore, it's called manslaughter. Send this to all women you know to brighten up their day. Cheers to our patients. Hello, just going to wait 1 second.
Betty.
Hi, Betty. We're live on Coffee Moaning. We just read out your message that you sent us. How weird. Mark was just saying almost the identical thing yesterday.
It was like you were in the room.
Love you. Bye. WhatsApp groups. What do we do without them?
Oh, that's a good one. Edward Bevington can't spell shenanigans without she. And another one that's quite appropriate to women with men in it is argumentative. Give you that one for nothing.
Actually, there was something on my friend Hannah's stories yesterday, and I thought, oh, that is so Coffee Moaning. Did you see it, Mark?
No, I didn't. I was too busy drinking Barocca.
Look, the very British problems, the greatest non-swearing British insults.
Oh, okay.
Dipstick, Wonka, Wally, Wazzock, Muppet, Burke, Mug, Plank, Numpty, Pillock.
Got a couple.
And my friend Hannah says missing div and donut for me. So anybody that is not British at the moment, you probably think we've lost our minds.
Well, another two is tool and
Dipstick. I love dipstick.
No, tool and toe rag.
Toe rag.
Toe rag. Think about a toe rag. It's really unpleasant, guys. Oh, oh well, I won't share what me and Maddie were saying about date.
I love Tosser, says Mo Power.
Yeah,
but Tosser is...
What was it? Play a trumpet again.
Come on.
Okay, all right. So what do we think about this? So Ian McKellen's saying, you could argue quite an old-fashioned thing, but it echoes what Sean Bean was saying. I don't know if you remember a while back, saying some of the changes in acting, theatre, filmmaking, he feels aren't for the better. And he feels that intimacy coordinators is one of those things that gets in the way of authentic, pure performance. Now this has caused, well, not the Ian McKellen comment, but the Sean Bean comment when it was shared, caused all sorts of consternation and upset, quite, with a number of the actresses that he was in Game of Thrones with. But from a female perspective, would you feel safer doing a intimate scene, sex scene, if you had an intimacy coordinator there?
So first of all, foremost, we've said we adore him. We think he's a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
All of those things. I'm not suggesting anything about him whatsoever. But what I would say is he has the joy of male privilege. Because I've been in situations where I've had to do stuff, a series that I did, an episode, a film that I did, and I always felt the power balance
Did you
being
feel
with
exploited?
all the men. I think I didn't know what I felt, but I felt discomfort, whatever that word was, if it was exploitation. I don't think, there were a couple of situations that I had where I think people were really horrible, scurrilous people. But I think in other situations where I felt uncomfortable, it was more just male privilege, where they just didn't understand how you felt. I go back to Emily Attack documentary the other day when she was explaining to her friends, good men, about this kind of abuse she was getting and the messages and they were laughing their heads off like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. And the reason they could laugh at it initially, before she actually explained to them what that felt like, was because they have the privilege of being men, and the balance is always the other way. So for me, I hear what you're saying, but I think it's far more important that women feel protected, because I think if you wanted to, as a woman, I would imagine, I haven't been an actress for a very long time, but you could say round the back to your intimacy coach, I feel very safe with this person. Could we just do a bit of impro at this point and see it? And I know that there will be those.
Right.
But I think it's really important that you have that as the norm. Because if you have to ask for one, if anyone's uncomfortable, ask for one. How are you going to do that? Because again, you've got to say you're uncomfortable in a world of male privilege.
I mean, an interesting example is this script that I've just written that we're going into production on this year, this film. When I was writing the script, there was a moment where the story was nudging towards a scene of intimacy. And I actually preemptively, and it didn't ruin the kind of scene, I preemptively kind of nudged it away from that, out of respect for not asking someone to have to do an intimacy, a scene of intimacy.
Where was this?
In the manifestos, it didn't appear in it. What I'm saying is that I nudged the writing of the script away from actually featuring that, because it didn't compromise the script, it didn't compromise the scene. You can create.
Did you feel awkward about it?
What, writing it?
About, like, in an ideal world, would you have preferred it to be in, but you're now aware that could be awkward?
Well, I was just aware. Yeah, I felt a discomfort around. I mean, if we'd gone for it, then we would have had to have used an intimacy coordinator. But I kind of just thought, no, I'm going to take this away, because it's interesting. I didn't want the actresses to feel that for the sake of the film it was needed.
Exactly.
If there was a compelling argument that the tone of the film could still exist without it. I think.
Well, I told you that story about the tits and teeth that director said to me in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be allowed now. And that humiliated me. But I can still feel the humiliation of that decades later, because it was so awful the way he said it. He made me feel just like a piece of meat, and I think, why not have a safety net? Because I do think also it will become very difficult for directors now as well, decent directors, to know what the right way is.
Edward Bevington sums it up. Sorry, just to quickly interrupt. Diffusion. That's exactly it.
That's a nice word.
And I think also it's incumbent on. I'm one of those guys who kind of, whenever I see a sex scene in a film, I often find them really not necessary. I think there are so many other more inventive ways of demonstrating that a couple have got to get, unless it's a program about the complications of politics of sex and stuff like that series with all those young girls, which was about sex, and say that, obviously, but often in sort of what I call genre pieces, this film that I'm doing is about coercive control. It's about, but even the coercive control is done through tech. There was no need to actually really push towards that scene, and I think diffusion is a good example of how you do it. And I sometimes think sex scenes are thrown in just for the sake of it. I really do. I don't think anyone likes them.
The best thing about this article is that it's such a lovely man who said it, and it showed us again that how people that have privilege don't often recognise it.
Yeah, Lee Doran. I find sex scenes quite awkward, if I'm honest. I mean, so do I. But again, someone said Erin there. I mean, Serena McKellen, huge doyen of theatre. I think there is a difference between theatre sex and screen sex. No? I think theatre sex is less intimate.
But if we're talking about it from the position of the actors, in a way, you're doing it live with people there.
But you're kind of safer because of that.
Well, that's in your opinion. It wouldn't be in my opinion.
I've never seen a play where deep intimacy happens in the way that it does in a film.
Well, no, that's something different. But if you're talking about the vulnerability as an actor,
right,
and you being vulnerable to people having a little extra squeeze or a bit of an extra, it's the same.
Yeah.
And sometimes in plain sight, people might try and get away with even more of it.
Faith Goodman, I think it's better if the writing and film directing lets the viewers use their imagination.
I think so too.
Jennifer Whalen, good point. Sex and Normal People was for a purpose. A lot of times it's gratuitous.
I loved the sex.
Yeah, and they had really strong intimacy coordinators on that. So
I loved that.
So yeah. Sticking with the world of film, Alec Baldwin, it's looking a little bit squeaky bum time for Alec Baldwin. What do you think,
Just
guys?
fill people in again, Martin.
Alec Baldwin is the actor who accidentally, I mean, no one is suggesting for a minute that he did it on purpose, but he accidentally, with a live gun, shot dead the cinematographer on his film, which he was also the co-producer on. He also hit the director in the chest. So there were two victims. Yeah,
Why?
yeah.
Sorry. With the bullet. Sorry, I thought
Yeah.
you meant another incident.
The weirdest part of this story, and we've discussed it a lot on the Weekly Rushes, is that Helena Hutchins' husband ceased sort of seeking reparations and money and all that kind of stuff, and stopped a litigation lawsuit against them. They even remounted production. They said they were going to go back into production on the same film, which I'd have thought was so odd without the cinematographer that was originally there. But I think in a way they were all thinking this would be a tribute to her. Let's make the film she would have loved and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's New Mexico, the district attorney in New Mexico has got the bit between their teeth and really wants someone to be answerable for a death. And I can kind of understand that, regardless of what or how something's happened.
I wonder how important that is for the family of her as well.
Well, but that's the interesting thing about Helena Hutchins' husband. He sort of stepped away from wanting that sort of, affirmation of what had gone wrong. But anyway, so Alec Baldwin is being charged with 2 counts of manslaughter. It's going to be in front of a jury. The New Mexico DA has brought forward almost all of the production team to testify. And where this gets tricky for Alec Baldwin is, and his armourer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, is that some of the members, obviously, that have been called forward, had huge misgivings about the production and the sort of tone and the kind of behaviour and the culture on set, specifically the script supervisor. So all eyes are on the script supervisor, Mamie Mitchell, because she was the one who rang in the incident. And in the incident, she was complaining about the first assistant director. She was complaining about the set. She made it clear that she was unhappy. And so we could, whilst a number of observers said, well, we think he's going to kind of be okay insofar as he didn't mean to kill her. It was a live gun. It was the armourer's responsibility. An interesting story that landed yesterday was that whilst he was being trained and shown the process of the gun, which should take an hour, he did it for half an hour. And for half an hour, he was on the phone to his family. So I think if all this stuff starts to stack up, and apparently I've heard rumours that guns were being used for sort of ad hoc gun practice, alongside the film set.
Were being, their accommodation was miles from the set. Yeah. People were exhausted. Now, years ago, I worked on a film, long time ago, where we were having 4 and 5 hour turnarounds. So you'd finish filming, you'd go back to your hotel or whatever, and you'd be back 4 or 5 hours later. Now, our industry is very open to young people and new people coming into accepting everything. Like some researchers, runners, APs, these people, they are literally, because they're so desperate to work, they will do anything. Work hours that nobody else would. And I have been in cars with certain production companies where I know that person, Jimmy, you know the series I'm talking about, had passed their test like a week or so before. We're doing 14-hour days and then they're driving us along the motorway. I was literally terrified all the time. So I think if this case pulls the whole industry up by its boots a bit, because there is exploitation in a lot of productions, then that's really good. I do think if all of what they're saying about Alex is true, there needs to be a really severe rap on the knuckles, because this is just so horrendous what happened. But for me, anyone going to prison, I think, would be ridiculous, because they must be all in all kinds of hell for what's happened.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is an aspect of this that's getting lost. I don't think any of them are trying to sort of maliciously or Machiavellianly kind of say, no. But
something's got to be learned from this tragedy.
Something somewhere went wrong. And I mean, a lot of people keep saying, in terms of the safety checks, I think strictly speaking, the law as it is, and the sort of protocol on set is that when he's handed a gun, he is right to assume it is not a live gun. I think he's absolutely right. Where I think he's vulnerable is as a producer. Because as a producer, he will have been involved in the culture. And this is always an issue. It's like when we shoot films, you have to have huge insurance policies in place, you have to have public liability, you have to have crew liability, you have to have location liability, you have to do hazard assessments, you have to make sure that your working hours are reasonable and all this kind of stuff. But if a live gun is on set, or if a gun is on set, and it's handed to an actor, I don't think he is legally bound to check. He has to assume. Now, the question mark is whether...
Belt and braces every time, I would think. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, I'm not necessarily saying if it was me, I probably would, but I don't think strictly speaking, and I think this is where the laws will change.
If it's true what they say that he was distracted, very actory, I'm on my phone, I'm not really listening to anyone. Honestly, you watch people on sets, it's just like, I'm amazed how people don't. What if, we don't know, what if one of that was, and of course you always double check yourself. I can't believe you wouldn't be told that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, yeah.
I mean, that's Alec Baldwin. And just finally, Sam Smith is in the news again. They, remember the pronoun, they, their performance at the Grammys has led some right-wing, they're all right-wing, aren't they? Republicans and people of a sort of more religious sort of bent to brand Sam Smith's performance as evil. Conservative US politicians and conspiracy theorists are accusing the Grammys of hosting a satanic ritual.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, we talk about...
He's running backwards at such speed.
We talk about fundamentalism in other parts of the world. That's a bit... I think it's a bit crazy. During Smith's performance, the 30-year-old singer performed a live rendition of their single, Unholy. The stage was lit up with red lighting, pyrotechnics, dancers performing in metal cages, while Smith was seen wearing a hat with horns. He was dancing. Madonna introduced Smith before their performance, saying, "Are you ready for a little controversy?" Ted Cruz retweeted quote tweets branding Smith's performance as satanic.
Oh, really?
This is
For the
evil.
love of God.
This is evil. Don't fight the culture wars, they say. Meanwhile, demons are teaching your kids to worship Satan. I could throw up. Guys, what's the world coming to, eh? What's the world coming? Okay, guys.
Now, just a quick one. We've got some birthdays to do, but also...
Have we?
Yes, Tori's dad.
Tori's dad,
And there was somebody else that said their
Someone else's birthday?
We are just about, straight after this, we're going to record our thoughts on all the press around ADHD over the last couple of days. And so we're going to upload that this morning. So
look, can I just read these two comments? Really important. Erin Bullimore, us non-binary are clearly the bane of existence. Yeah, it's a deep threat. It's a deep threat, isn't it, to the status quo?
With all the other things we've got to worry about.
Sean Tucker, they said that gay people go to hell. So I think Sam just embraced that. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Okay, guys. So Tori's dad, Ken, but she also would like you to blow him a kiss at the end of singing.
Ken, I'm going to blow you a kiss now. Mwah! Happy birthday to you.
Ken.
Happy birthday to you.
Ken.
Happy birthday, dear Ken. What a beautiful daughter you have.
Ken.
Happy birthday to you.
And beautiful grandchildren too.
Squash tomatoes and stew.
And we have a birthday for Jill Jones.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jill. Happy birthday to you.
Okay, guys, have a lovely day. And as we say, ADHD will land and the second southward jaunt around